I'm going to give an overview of Paradigm. Take me about 10 minutes to go through the story, and then I'll hand over to Andrew, who can talk to you about the issues of osteoarthritis, treatment with a number of different drugs, and in particular treatment with our drug Pentazan. In terms of the corporate overview, what does Paradigm do? Paradigm takes an existing drug and finds a new use for it. That's very important in terms of understanding the business model, and that has a number of advantages for investors. We do have a number of indications that we're repurposing this drug for. The drug is Pentazan or PPS or Pentazan polysulfate, but specifically today we're going to talk about arthritis, and particularly 3 forms of arthritis. Okay, these first 3 points on the presentation I think are really key in terms of summarising the investment proposition. By taking a drug that's already on the market and finding a new use for it, we significantly reduce the cost of development, we significantly improve the chances of success, and we also have the ability to accelerate the commercialisation of the drug. So instead of starting back at the development of the drug and developing for 10 years or so before you start phase 2, Paradigm's able to start its trials at phase 2, which saves around about $1 billion in about 10 years to get to that point. And the key issue here is that phase 2 trials, this is trials of efficacy of the drug in man, are the key value inflection points in any pharmaceutical company. There are some increases in value as you go along that 10-year period, but if you get to phase 2 and then you get through phase 2 successfully, that is a major inflection point. And that's the second point here, that we have 2 phase 2 readouts. So the completion of 2 phase 2s in calendar year 2018. So we have one reading out in June, and we have another reading out around about December 2018. So from an investment point of view, you're looking at investment today, as Sam said, with a significant discount to our last traded price, our last 15-day VWAP, and you're looking at a time horizon of around about 14 months before you get some significant and potentially significant value inflection points. Now, the other important point is that with existing drugs, we're able to generate 2 forms of data. We can develop data through the traditional pharmaceutical pathway, which is double-blind, placebo-controlled phase 2 studies. But we can also utilise the drug on a case-by-case basis, and that's really how Andrew was treated through his doctor under the Special Access Scheme. So as we go through the presentation, I'll be talking about the endpoints that we have in terms of the phase 2 trials, being June and December next year. That is the phase 2 trials. But throughout next year, we'll have ongoing news flow around about these case studies. And the case studies will centre around people with advanced osteoarthritis, or the case studies will centre around elite athletes and maybe even some retired AFL footballers who are undergoing treatment at the moment. This can be read a little bit later, but obviously Paradigm has a very highly credentialed board. All of the board members have ASX listed company experience, and they all have experience in some of the major healthcare and pharmaceutical stocks in Australia, such as CSL. As a pharmaceutical company, we do have a pipeline, we do have a number of other indications, but as I said today, we're going to focus on the 3 forms of osteoarthritis. Arthritis can be a degenerative disease. So this is one of the biggest and most common forms of osteoarthritis. This is the degenerative osteoarthritis with people aged 45 and above generally. It can happen at an earlier age, but this is generally related to genetics, maybe being overweight, a whole range of environmental factors, and maybe even type of work that's been undertaken. In the US, there are currently 27 million people with osteoarthritis. This is degenerative osteoarthritis. And on the right-hand side, you'll see this is an MRI of a fairly typical person with degenerating joint, and all of those bright white areas that I'm highlighting here should not be there, and these fluffy white areas in the bone, these are the lesions in the bone, should not be there, but together they constitute a very stiff and a very painful joint. The therapeutic market size for treating osteoarthritis or degenerative osteoarthritis is $5 billion a year, and current therapies include non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, corticosteroids, and even opioids. They treat symptomatic pain, and what I mean by that is that if you stop taking the drug, generally within 24 to 48 hours, the pain that the drug was masking returns. So it's not doing anything for the health of the joint. It's just simply deadening the pain today, and you have to keep taking those drugs. One of the problems is that they often have well-established, well-known side effects when used over long periods of time. So they're not ideal for treating degenerative osteoarthritis. PPS, on the other hand, after a course of the drug, it can be up to 6 months, maybe 12 months, maybe longer before any of the symptoms of the stiffness and the pain return. So it is actually helping the joint. It's repairing the joint as well as reducing the pain and improving the function of the joint. As I mentioned before, these last 2 points, very important. Phase 2 trial, that's a randomised double-blind placebo-controlled phase 2 trial reading out December calendar year, sorry, that's calendar year 18, that's my mistake, quarter 4 calendar year 2018. But in addition to that, we'll have this real-world evidence. These are case studies that will be constantly reported throughout 2018. Now, what do I mean by that? Here's an example of our case studies. Down the bottom is the first case study that was reported, and this was published in a peer-reviewed journal. This shows a 70-year-old lady with advanced osteoarthritis, significant pain, and her MRI showed significant degeneration of the joint. Before PPS, her pain score was 8 out of 10. This is her MRI after PPS, and her pain score was to 0. So all of these, you see these bright areas here, this is the same lady, same joint, 6 weeks after treatment, and all of those issues have been removed. Her pain score went to 0. Her knee function score improved 45%, so the swelling was able to make the joint much more freer, and also she had 100% remission of those subchondral lesions. These lesions are next to the cartilage in the bone. So that was published, and then in addition to that, we then announced to the market 24 more cases. These are 24 more people who were ineligible for a clinical trial. They were generally very late stage patients with osteoarthritis, generally grade stage 4, which means they're probably on a waiting list for a knee replacement. So out of those 24 patients, we had an 83% response rate in terms of reduction in pain. And we had a 80% improvement in joint function. And we also had significant improvement in the bone lesions on MRI. So that was reported to the market. So next year, we'll be continuing to do this throughout the year. So it won't just be those 2 key value inflection points in June and December. It will be first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, with news about some of these case studies that all go to show what the drug is likely to do in a double-blind placebo-controlled study. The second form of arthritis can come from a viral infection. In terms of viral infections, we know that there's a particular type of virus called an alpha virus that's transmitted from mosquitoes to man. If the mosquito is infected with the virus, once it's transmitted to the human, it sets up a very aggressive form of arthritis, generally affecting all of the major joints in the body. And then in the chronic phase, it tends to settle in the wrists and fingers and in the ankles and toes. We have Ross River as an alpha virus in Australia. Worldwide, there's a very closely associated virus, alpha virus, called chikungunya, which is now becoming very prominent in North America. Paradigm is working with the US Department of Defense, where in Puerto Rico, the US Department of Defense has a naval base and also Air Force base. They have quite a large number of servicemen and women infected with chikungunya, and obviously they're very interested in our data to show that we can actually stop the progression from this polyarthritis into this arthritis. We have preclinical data to do that. We're currently doing a phase 2 trial with Ross River in Australia, so that will read out in June, and that will be the catalyst for entering into agreement with the US Department of Defense. Now, I mentioned there was 3 forms of arthritis. I'm now just going to go to what I think are some key aspects to be aware of. Paradigm has patents granted. These are not applied for patents, these are granted patents. You can see in North America, in Europe, Japan, China, Australia, New Zealand, for example. So these patents are already granted. That's a significant difference between patents that have been applied for. So these have been applied for years ago, now granted, which gives us market exclusivity in those regions. Share price catalysts, as I mentioned, we have this phase 2 randomised double-blind placebo control for viral arthritis reading out, so finishing Q2 2018. We also have a phase 2 trial of 100 patients with arthritis, and they are reading out in December 2018. Throughout the year, we'll have regular updates with real-world evidence on acute injuries. So these will be sports people like Andrew who've been treated with the drug and will be able to document their story and their experience with Pentazan. And we'll also have ongoing data around the degenerative arthritis. So these are patients who have had or about to have a knee replacement treated with Pentazan, and their clinical results will be displayed to the market. Now these are very important because these give you some insight into what is happening or what is likely to happen in the clinical trial. Now I mentioned 3 forms of arthritis. Another form arises from acute joint injuries. So these can be injuries such as anterior cruciate ligament ruptures, meniscal tears, hyperextensions of the joint, ruptured medial lateral ligaments, PCL, etc. With these injuries, it sets up a very aggressive form of osteoarthritis. There's these very large, this is an ACL, an MRI of a patient who's had a ruptured ACL, which I'm highlighting here, and you see the extent of the lesions in the bone. And these lead to extreme and rapid cartilage breakdown. Very hard to treat. Currently there's no therapeutic on the market to treat this. And so I just highlight that Paradigm has doctors from 4 AFL clubs currently treating current AFL players, and that's across a range of very hard to treat injuries. It's these bone lesions that appear in the joints, the knees and the ankles. There's also a couple of cases where osteitis pubis is a groin pain that's very hard to treat. We're having success with the product on a number of AFL players at the moment, and the list goes on, and we'll be looking to publish some of those in the Journal of Sports Medicine. One of the first AFL players treated with Pentazan, and this is going back now nearly 2 years ago, is the person in the room here, Andrew Walker. To the people in the southern states, of course, Andrew needs no introduction, but maybe to the people in New South Wales and Queensland, where AFL is not their #1 sport. Andrew is a one club player. He played over 200 games for one of the very well and established AFL clubs here in Melbourne, Carlton, a very much loved club by a lot of people at Morgan's in the Victorian office. And so I would like to now hand over to Andrew, and in particular, for those listening, hopefully be able to translate what I said in terms of the commercial opportunity into a real-life example of someone who has experienced this acute joint injury, developed this rapid form of arthritis, had treatment with a number of medications, and then moved on and tried Pentazan. And hopefully that story that Andrew's telling is we now have seen it replicated many, many times. You'll be able to relate to your clients that this is an opportunity that represents a very near-term and potentially significant return on your investment. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Mr. Andrew Walker.
Yeah, in terms of sport, I always really prided myself on basically being able to take my body to a level it hadn't been before. So from the age of 12, I was obviously right into my sport, and state high jumper, 400 metre runner, 800 metre runner, an All-Australian footballer from the age of 16, so playing All-Australian. A district cricketer, played basketball with Bendigo Braves and the Echuca Pirates. As I mentioned, it's a funny thing. to me, being able to take my body to another level and that unenjoyable pain become really enjoyable for me. So I began being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That's my little saying that I've always had. So when I finally got to the highest level, I used that as a strength and a bit of a mindset over whoever I was playing against. So whether I was playing half back, half forward, especially playing half back, I always knew that I could always do those big runs and always get back to my opponent and be able to defeat him. Playing half forward, I always knew that I could go on those big runs up the ground and be able to race my guy back and be able to beat him to the goal square. Excuse me. But then the battle, I call it the battle, the physical, but more importantly, the physical battle, the mental battle of what was about to happen to me in 2014, and something I was unaware of that was happening in my knee. I knew I had some issues growing up. I had surgery on my knee in 2003 for a lesion that was removed, and it came back to get me in about 2014. So being a strong and healthy person and really took pride in my appearance and my physical ability. I had this battle with something that I wasn't really sure what it was, but I just could feel my knee changing, and I had a year that was the most frustrating, the hardest mentally to get through, and something that is one of those years that if you could forget a year, that would have been the year. I'll talk a little bit about it. So my last year of AFL football, as I said, I call it the worst year of my life in 31 years. I played with pain probably 9 out of 10 for probably 18 months. So a lot of my training and being an AFL footballer, if you're allowed, if your coach says, "Are you right to play?" you're always going to say yes. So I can still remember those 2 years. I was trying to be really proud and trying to say that I wasn't sore and all those things, but I knew I had this issue going on with my knee. So from that, I learned a lot about myself, mentally and physically. One thing that I had to do to get myself up to play AFL football was having my knee drained 3 times a week. I was having 100 mils of fluid pulled out of my knee on a Monday to get up for a Tuesday session. I was having another 100 mils taken out of my knee on a Thursday, and post or pre-game, depending if I had to fly interstate. Obviously flying used to make my knee swell, just being uncomfortable on a plane, those things used to make my knee really blow up. So half an hour before a game, I was having anywhere from 100 to 150 mils of fluid drained from my knee just to be able to get out there and run around, and then having it local just so the pain was bearable. I said this is quite sick really, but I often tell people that game day for me was actually a good day, because the 6 days away from game day I had 9 out of 10 pain. The local was actually helping me just relieve myself for 2 hours of pain, but then I had this horrible roller coaster of pain and trying to get up and play elite level sport. So in 2013 I played half back. I finished up runner up best and fairest for Carlton. I led the comp in rebound 50s, and it was only at the end of that year I was having a medical and got a scan on my knee, and the I guess the realism of it all come to fore. I had pretty serious amounts of osteoarthritis in my left knee. I had some surgery to clear up some meniscus tears, and it's amazing. That season 2013, I was strong, healthy. I did have photos to show because it's something I always reflect on. I played at 91 kilos. I had 7% body fat, and I was in complete best nick AFL, my best AFL career nick. To 9 months later, suffering with this knee, I dropped 6.5 kilos. So I played that year at 84, 85 kilos from one, not being able to train, having to train differently, couldn't get out on the track, wasn't out in the track. The only fitness I was doing was in a altitude room on a bike, and it was becoming really frustrating. My brain was telling me I needed to train, but I just couldn't get myself out in the training track to be able to do it. Hence the reason why, through stress, it was an extremely depressive year. I don't suffer from depression, but from when you need your body, your tool is your body at AFL level. I was unable to get out there and do the things I really wanted to do. My brain was telling me to do it, but my body just wasn't allowing me to do it. So I've got here in really big writing, I lost me, and that's when I decided that, you know, I had to seek some alternate treatment, and that's where PPS came in for me. So basically, at the age of 30, I was told I needed an osteotomy, which, for people who don't know what that is, it's surgery where they break your leg and change the force going through your knee joint. And as an AFL footballer, I still had 3 years left in my contract, which would have seen me miss 9 to 12 months of training in football, or even career done. That sort of surgery is extremely invasive and usually ends people and restricts you to things like basically being able to go for a walk and throw a frisbee with your dog, or throw a footy to your kids. And that's one thing that scared me to death. As I said, I was 29 going on 30, and it was either that or a partial knee replacement. The significance of my osteoarthritis had really taken its toll, and the pain obviously was a 9 out of 10 for 2 years, so it was something that I was really struggling with. And funnily enough, those two surgeries were two things that I was highly considering the person I was becoming. I was becoming angry, depressed. I've got 3 kids, and I was unable to do simple things like walk to the park and kick a footy with them, or just general things like going from my bedroom to the kitchen. I was leaning on walls to get down there because the pain was so significant. So you can see why, as an athlete, I knew my career was obviously coming to an end, but the things that started to come onto my mind was I had 3 children at the age of, at that time, 7, 4 and 1, and the thought of being 30 and not being able to be physically active with them was something that was highly depressive for me and was making me quite, I guess, anxious about the next part of my life, the next 10 or 15 years of my life. So to now, I guess in July 2016, so it's only really been a year and a bit ago, I was lucky enough to be a part of a trial with PPS, and so I finished up playing footy. I retired in 2016, and my last game was in the end of July, but I just started the trial, so was able to get WADA approval and TGA approval for the drug. To right now, I had it in July. I said I was never going to play footy again. I ended up doing a full pre-season with my local club, West Preston. I'm over at West Preston, so they asked me to come down and do some coaching, and I ended up doing the full pre-season and was training 2 nights a week. Ended up playing the whole season in Div 1, Preston West. Ended up finishing second in the BNF. I ended up playing 15 out of the 18 games, and the 3 that I missed were due to work commitments with Carlton. As I said, runner-up best and fairest, and played predominantly as a midfielder, so I was playing 90% of the game as a midfielder. And like I said, to a lot of other people, the knee was the least of my worries. It was basically everything else, all the little soft tissues I'd had in my AFL days. Those were the little things that were starting to pop up again. But in terms of the pain that was going through my knee, that was once a 9 or 10 just to walk from the kitchen to the bedroom, I was playing a full game and not thinking about my knee anymore. Even the next day, you'd expect to wake up with fluid in your knee, and I was shocked. I'd do all my normal recovery after a game still, even at that level. I'd be in the pool and stuff like that, but it wasn't for the fact that I need to get swelling out of my knee. It's just part of my routine. And I was surprised that throughout the season at Carlton, if I was to play on a Saturday, I wasn't training. And like I said to you guys, I wasn't training till really late in the week, if at all, and it was usually a Thursday. But with West Preston, I was able to get to training on Tuesdays and still be able to move around, and I've just been really, really thankful to be a part of this trial, and it's something that I look back on now, and at the time, as with all the things I've tried PRP, I've tried stem cell therapy, Durolane, cortisones, and you become a little bit sceptical of certain things, but this is one thing that was not only something that got me active again, but sort of got myself back. I lost me in 2014 and 15, and even towards the end of start of 16. But really fortunate that I was a part of this trial, because it was something that gave my life back, and now being extremely active again with my 3 children, walking, running every day, and just back being really fit and enjoying my fitness and football and life again. So that's my story. Thank you.